Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on Audi's brand new e-tron GT. I'm up here at the top of beautiful Scotland on the North Coast 500 and we've actually got a window of sunshine, so I'm going to try and knock this intro out as quick as possible. I remember seeing the e-tron GT prototype at the Geneva Motor Show back in 2019 and thinking to myself, well, if that's the future, if that's what some electric cars are going to look like, then I could eventually see myself getting in one, because just like the rest of the Audi e-tron range, it looks very familiar. It looks different to one of their combustion engine cars, but it also looks very similar to something like their RS7, which is a good thing. It's not shouting, look at me, I'm an electric car. It's very stylish and very cool. There's two models available at launch in the UK. The base model, the e-tron GT, which starts at about £81,000 on the road, and the RS e-tron GT, which this one is, starts at about £112,000 on the road. Although this one, being a press car, well, it has lots of toys thrown at it, and it actually has a retail price of about £130,000. The e-tron GT has very similar underpinnings to the brilliant Porsche Taycan, and up until now that's definitely my favoured EV car, although the range on that is not that great at around 200 miles in the real world. This particular RS e-tron GT, well, it produces 598 horsepower with its two motors, and it has an overboost function which I believe lasts about 8 seconds, and then it produces 645 horsepower, so it's massively rapid. Obviously it's an all-wheel drive quattro system, but it does weigh 2,350-ish kilos, which is roughly 400 kilos heavier than an RS7 Sportback. So typically EV, it weighs a lot. That doesn't slow it down too much though, because this has a claimed 0 to 62 figure of just 3.3 seconds, and I'm sure it would do that come rain or shine. In fact, we'll test that out shortly. This car's extremely slippery and has a coefficient of just 0.24, and that helps give it a claimed range of just over 280 miles. Although I've found it to be nowhere near that figure on today's drive, but we'll talk about that once we jump in. Okay, first things first, what a beautiful part of the world this is. North Coast 500, look at the views, look at the scenery, absolutely stunning out here. It really is just like no other place on earth, and every time I come up here, I've only been here 3 times in my life, I always think to myself, why am I not up here more often? But it is so far. We flew up here today on an amazing private jet, I might add, thanks to the Audi UK press team. To drive up here, it is a long old haul, but when you're here, it's just amazing. And this road, well, it's so quiet and deserted, and it's just an amazing, amazing part of the world. The weather is all over the place. I have tried to do my intro today 5 times, stopped in 5 different places, and each time failed because of the rain or because of, well, the tourists getting in my way or whatever. So anyway, I'm in the car finally on the homeward stretch back to Inverness Airport. Unfortunately, this loop that we've been given, which is a great loop, is 180 miles. And the range of this car, as we talked about on the outside, of the claimed range is 280 miles. When I got in this car this morning from the airport, fully charged, it was saying 208 miles. So that's over 70 miles off what Audi claimed, because this is a new car. It's only done 900 miles, so it's only had a few charge cycles. So hopefully that's going to get better. Anyway, I'm about, whatever I am into this route, 2/3 into this route, and I now only have 70 miles of range left, and I have 61 miles of my journey left. So I haven't been able to stop and do any flybys. I haven't been able to do anything. In fact, up until this point, I've been driving this car so sedately you wouldn't believe it. I've been overtaken once by a Suzuki Jimny or something similar. That's how slow I've been going. So I haven't really been enjoying the drive because I haven't been able to utilize the power, because I've had massive range anxiety, and that's what EVs bring me all the time, is range anxiety, especially when you're up here in the middle of nowhere and no charging places anywhere. What can you do? Well, you can't do anything. There's nothing you can do except drive slowly. So although it's been a beautiful scenic route, and although I know this car's potential is ridiculous, I haven't been able to utilize any of its power. Honestly, I probably haven't used more than about 10%, 15% maximum of its available torque. I am going to put it into dynamic in a minute and just give it a 5-minute squirt for the camera, just because I need to. I owe it to you guys and I owe it to me, because it's been very frustrating otherwise. But before we do that, let's just talk about the aesthetics of this cabin. Well, the cabin is spot on. This is genuinely the nicest cabin that Audi make. I said, in fact, the recent e-tron S video I did, that's probably their nicest, but this is even better. In fact, it's ergonomically miles better, because they've reintroduced buttons like they have in the Audi A3. So I've got buttons down here for all of my climate control. I've got buttons for my heated seats. I've got buttons where I want there to be buttons, which is just exactly what I want. It's good that Audi have almost admitted to themselves that the full touchscreen systems just don't work. This has a specific e-tron GT digital dash or virtual dash, so some slightly different displays on there, which are really nice, and I think the graphics are the nicest I've seen on any of their virtual cockpits. So really nice. Steering wheel seems very familiar. We've got the paddles here just like we do in the normal e-trons, and the left one basically adds more regeneration, so you can kind of use it as a feather brake if you like. So I can use it coming into this left-hander a little bit, and then the right one releases that, but it's not massively effective. But everything else in here is really nice. Lovely head-up display. The seats are very comfortable, very supportive, and they do fit me. The driving position's very good. Back of the cabin is a little bit tight for space. You're not going to get 3 big adults in there, but you are going to get 2 adults in there in relative space. There's not much headroom. Anyone over about 5'11" is going to struggle for headroom in the back, but it's not too bad. Boot space, it's quite a small boot. I think it's about 360 litres, which is miles down on something like an RS7 boot, which is I think 580 litres or something. Yeah, it's not the biggest boot in the world, but obviously the rear seats fold forward if you need to get in the back. In terms of ride quality, well, I'm in comfort at the moment, and it is reasonably good. I'm rolling on 22-inch wheels. It's okay, but it is a bit crashy. It's not as good as an RS7. It just it struggles to manage its weight in comfort. It's all right over smallish bumps and undulations, but when you hit slightly bigger ones, you can feel it hitting the soft bumps on the suspension. It does struggle. The reason it struggles is because we're talking about, well, with me in, over 2.4 tons, which is heavier than an RS Q8, so it's a lot of weight. And although it's on the floor and it feels reasonably sporty in the bends, which we will talk about soon, it's having to manage a lot of weight all the time, and that is the biggest issue with EVs, is weight. Obviously it ruins the handling dynamics, it makes ride comfort difficult to manage, and most importantly for an EV is weight kills range, and it's kind of what I'm seeing in this car. I can't eke out any kind of range. As I was saying earlier on, I drove it so softly for the first hour and a half, and it was giving me a predicted range of about 200 miles, which just isn't good enough. As we talked about outside, this is essentially based on the Porsche Taycan, and in terms of comparative models, well, it kind of sits in between the Taycan Turbo and the Taycan Turbo S in terms of output. And all 3 of those are quick enough. They're all around 3 seconds to 60. And in fact, Matt Watson has timed one of these RS e-trons to 60 miles an hour with his GPS over and over, and it was 3 seconds flat each time. And that's what these cars do with the all-wheel drive traction, with the instant torque and power. they're always going to put in the same relentless time. So 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. Obviously that uses a lot of range and a lot of energy, so I couldn't do it for you today, unfortunately, as my range now reads 57 miles and I've got 50 miles to the airport, so yay! But let's just talk about what it feels like when you do put your foot down for the first time. So I'm going to slow it right down here, right down. We're in a 60 limit, there's absolutely nothing around. You know what, let's just do a launch anyway. Right, here we go, foot on the floor and off. And there's 60. Wow, that, I don't even know if that was launch control, but that was certainly very, very fast. And there's no denying how fast these cars are. In fact, all EVs out there, even something like a mini electric, feels quick. You know, it's all that available torque and available power. It's there immediately. It's very, very quick. And the main issue with all of these sporty, very, very fast EVs is they're a bit of a one-trick pony. Once you've experienced those crazy acceleration forces 3 or 4 times, you kind of get used to them, and then you realize there's not much more to it. Not like a combustion engine car where each acceleration is slightly different, feels a little bit different. If it's a rear wheel drive car, you might hook it up, you might not. In this, it just hooks up and it goes. Massively efficient in that sense, but not that engaging and exciting after you've done it a few times. Okay, your passengers might still feel it each and every time after that because they can't anticipate it, but it's just not that exciting. So you end up cruising around in it. I think that's what EVs are good for. They're good for cruising. The problem with the cruising ability is they can't cruise for far, 200 miles for anything that Audi make, and that's about it. And therefore you're just left thinking, well, wouldn't I rather be in an RS7 up here with 350, 400 mile range, and then I just pop into the petrol station, fill it up. Could be having so much more fun in something like that than one of these. And that's my biggest reservation with EVs, is you're just so limited as to the fun that you can have in them. They don't give you that much fun apart from the acceleration aspect. And then if you do enjoy them, or you do push them on along your favourite road, the range disappears so quickly, and before you know it, any of your fun is taken away. And in my case, you're then heading back to Inverness Airport and back down to London. So your time is kind of over very quickly. And it's a bit like when I was younger, I used to have an obsession with remote control cars, and I'd go out and buy, well, rather expensive ones at the time, battery powered ones, and you'd go out, you'd have your 10 minutes of fun, and then it would go flat. And just when you were getting into the groove, the battery would go flat. You could buy another battery and have another 10 minutes of fun. But you can't do that with an EV on the road. Once it's flat, you've got to go and invest some time at a charger, wherever that might be. So I personally don't see the point in going for a crazy fast EV like this. In terms of handling dynamics, well, we're in dynamic now, which is the stiffest or sportiest mode in the majority of Audis, and I can feel the suspension stiffened up a bit, and the throttle response is even more responsive, which is just insane. But you're constantly aware of that near 2.4 tons of weight, and although most of the weight is on the floor, the batteries are down low, and this car is very low anyway, so it's not like it's got a high centre of gravity, but it's just all of that momentum. It really does feel like a heavy car, especially when you're on a nice twisty undulating road. You can feel its mass and momentum. Going back to when we were talking about the comfort suspension, the way it struggles to sort of control its weight when you hit a big undulation, it's the same in the twisty sections. When you really start pushing it, you're not really sure of what's going on. I'd like to take this out on a circuit or a handling track where I could push it and there's loads of runoff, just to see where the front end grip is, because on the public road, in the short time that I've had it today, it's very hard to suss out what is going on underneath you, because there is so much technology in this car that's keeping you nice and flat and level and disguising its weight. But the issue with that is when you do start pushing on, it's very hard, because the car's not talking to you, it's not telling you anything. And I think the first you'd know about it is when it's definitely too late, because 2.4 tons, if that's facing in the wrong direction and you haven't got any tarmac to gather it up, then you're in big trouble. We're coming into a nice left-hander here by the looks of things, so we'll accelerate in, on the brake, heavy turn in, stays very flat, and then the acceleration out, it's instant, you know, all that traction, there's no issues. Earlier on it was absolutely hammering it down with rain, it was 3.5 degrees, so the poor tyres, which are actually Goodyear Eagle F1 Supersports in this car, so very, very good tyres, but those tyres, you know, what they were being asked to do, they must be special EV tyres on these cars, because the extra load that they have, even compared to something like an RS6 or an RS7, is just mind-boggling what that rubber has to deal with when you're fully loaded up in a corner and you give it full gas. I mean, the twisting forces and the wheels and the tyres is just insane, but it does it all, but not in a sporty way. What's my conclusion with the brand new e-tron GT? Is it worth buying? Well, like most EVs, people are forced into buying them. So whether it's a country that you live in, somewhere like Norway, where they're massively pro electric cars, or whether it's your company car tax scheme or whatever it might be, in which case, well, this e-tron GT is a brilliant piece of kit, as is the Porsche Taycan. Which one would I choose out of the two? Well, I think the Porsche Taycan is definitely dynamically better. It's more of a driver's car, especially that rear-wheel drive version that I tried recently, the base model, so the cheapest out of all of them, 70-odd thousand pounds without any options. That to me has the most feel, and feels more like a traditional combustion engine car, if you like, or sports car. This e-tron GT is massively capable, very, very fast in a straight line, and would go down your favourite A or B road as quick as the majority of sports cars out there. You would get to the end trying to figure out how you just managed to get through that road so quick. Certainly wouldn't feel like it was you that did it, it's more so the car, and you'd be there scratching your head trying to figure out how it's just done that and how it made it around that left-hander 2 miles ago. But it will do it because of the magic that's going on in the chassis, but you're not sitting there having lots of fun doing that, whereas in the Taycan you would be having a little bit more fun. But then when you jump inside both of the cars, the Audi cabin does it for me. They've got rid of that touchscreen, as we talked about, and the Taycan is pretty much all touchscreen, and it does work very well in that car, but this is what I want to see in the cabin of the car. And somehow this car is very futuristic in here, bang up to date, super modern, very, very well styled, but there's buttons down here and everything works, and I haven't been frustrated in the cabin with any of the infotainment system. It just all works, and you know, if it's feeling cold in here, I just lift that and there you go, I'm up 2 degrees in temperature. I don't need to talk to the car, I don't need to go through any menus or anything, it's just done. If I want to turn my heat seat on, I just press that button. I'm not going to press that button because I now have 28 miles of range and the airport is 23 miles away, so I've got 5 miles of range to play with. And that's the annoying thing, because I'm currently doing 45 miles an hour along this 60 road, and normally I would be overtaking cars and overtaking that truck in front, but I don't actually have the available energy or power to do that. And typically, being an EV, it's going to start reducing my available power, so I'm not going to be able to use 100% torque or anything, because as the battery gets towards the bottom of its range, as does the torque and power, so it restricts you. And that's again a little bit frustrating, because obviously in a combustion engine car with 25 miles in the tank, unless you're on track and the fuel's slushing around, you might get a bit of starvation, you're still going to get maximum power out of your engine on a normal road, and that's not the case with the EV. So massively impressive car, very comfortable, reasonable space in the back. Think more A5 Sportback than A7, I would say. It's a little bit claustrophobic back there. You can see the rear windows, there's not much glass and they don't go fully down, so I think sitting back there, especially with the carbon roof, which I believe is standard on the RS e-tron GT, there's not much light back there, but you can opt to have the glass roof, and although that's going to add a bit of weight, let's face it, this thing weighs as much as the Houses of Parliament, so adding a glass panel up there is not going to do much else to ruining its sort of driving dynamics. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. I'm sorry this hasn't been a special or elaborate video. I ran out of time, ran out of weather, and ran out of patience. So it's a very basic first drive video. I'll hopefully get my hands on one of these in the not too distant future and do a proper video on it. Maybe answer some of the questions that you guys are asking me in the comments now. But until then, or until my next video, take it easy. Thanks so much for watching as always, and thanks for the support, and I'll see you at the next video. Cheers.